Unlock the high returns of the expanding venture capital world right here on the Emerging Managers Podcast.
Well, hello. Welcome back to the Emerging Managers Podcast. My name is Scott Kelly. I am the founder and CEO of Black Dog Venture Partners and your host. And I had a great conversation with John Neace of Neace Ventures, and he shared his entrepreneurial journey and his investment philosophy on the podcast. And, John started out in insurance, building and selling two successful firms before venturing into other industries like trucking, furniture, food, and beverage. And John emphasizes investing with passionate entrepreneurs who are receptive to new ideas and have a clear vision for successful exits. He's been involved in a lot of great investments with a mix of his personal funds and limited partners, with a focus on opportunities that align with enjoyment, transparency, and a clear understanding of the time horizons from beginning to end. And John advises in understanding the risk and communicating openly and not letting failures consume you. So a really interesting interview with John Neace. Give it a listen. I'll be back with some of my takes. Well, hello, everybody. Scott Kelly, founder and CEO of Black Dog Venture Partners and your host for the Emerging Managers Podcast. And I'm excited to introduce everybody listening in today to John Neace of Neace Ventures. John, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
So give me a little bit, before we get into the fun and what you're doing in the F&B space, maybe share a little about your personal background, what you've done prior to that, and things you're doing in addition to the fund.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a Kentucky boy, right? Born and raised in northern Kentucky in Newport. College up there, then to graduate school at Xavier, and then hired by Marsh & McLennan, who's the largest insurance broker in the world. Worked for them for about 11 years. They moved me a couple times, and the last move was, a whopping 100 miles down the road to Louisville. So I ran their offices here in Kentucky, and then big giant corporation, it's time for the next move up the ladder, if you will. I had two young kids by then. Like I said earlier, I'm a Kentucky boy and we liked it here, and I didn't really want to move. So it was take the move or, somebody else was going to take this office over. So I left them. I enjoyed working for them though. They were fabulous to me. They really were. But I left them. I started my own firm, doing the same thing, selling insurance, and grew it for 20 years. And then I sold it to private equity. So it became Assured Partners. And I had about 900 people when I sold it. Wow. Assured Partners just sold, they just actually closed a transaction maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. And they sold to Gallagher. So they must have been better at growing it than me, because they were $3 billion when they sold out. But honestly,
seems like you did a pretty good job to start it, though.
Yeah, I didn't want that size of company. That's not me. But sold to them. Then I had a 5-year non-compete, so I had to wait out the non-compete. I came back, started another insurance venture, and then sold it to Fifth Third Bank, who subsequently, a couple of years later, sold it on to what is now Foundation Risk Partners. Okay. So a couple of forays at insurance, along the way, right? You meet, you become good friends with your customers, and at least I did. And I'd have a customer who was ready to retire, and he wanted me to try to help him find a buyer for his business. And I would say almost in every case, why don't you sell it to your number two? He or she's been here and they've been really running it for you anyway, right?
Right.
Or at least helping to run it. And the answer was always the same. I don't want to negotiate price with them. I don't want to be the bank. And I feel like the business is headed into a downturn, and so I would say, well, Laura, would you be objective? Would you mind if I talk to your number two and see if he or she wanted to buy it with me? They said, I don't care who buys it, right? Just don't call me if you have problems.
Right.
So I guess the first 2 or 3 deals kind of just serial entrepreneur style, right? But going into businesses where I had a lot of familiarity, because while I was not part of the team, I handled the insurance for the team. So I generally knew the good, the bad, and the ugly, of what was going on. And certainly learned, how to tell a good operator from a bad one,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe a good one from just a lucky one, right? Mm-hmm. And so, it was fun. So then after the second insurance non-compete expired, I decided, okay, I want to try my hand at a few other things.
Mm-hmm.
So I had been an Ashley Furniture Store trademark user and had started a trucking business around that. So we expanded our trucking business. I like to have a beverage or two, right? So we had invested in a winery. We had invested in a local beer here called Fall City Beer.
Okay. I'm familiar with it.
Yeah, believe it or not, at one time they were the third largest beer in America. Yeah. That was long before I got here. But anyway, we invested with a group in a bourbon while bourbon was really hot, called Four Gate Bourbon, and just exited that in the last 3 months, really, or 6 months anyway. Invested in a hemp business. And then I was trying to sell more beer, really, right? Trying to figure out how to sell more beer. And one of the ways it seemed, as I talked to folks who knew what they were doing, was you need food. So we started looking at opening a restaurant or a tap room and ran into Parlor Pizza in that process, and then bought Parlor because it gave us 7 locations, really for the price of what I think I would have paid for 1 or 2. And so we've now added 2 more locations and, are growing the pizza people pints business, right? And yeah, it's been fun. I think I've learned one thing there that, if you're in the food business, you might as well be in the real estate business at the same time. Sure. Because if you put a concept in and it doesn't work, you've spent a lot of money anyway. So I like to be able to control that space and then pivot. Right. So we've done a little bit of.
How did this become like? You obviously went to the website. It looks like you've got several companies, in the F&B and related space. How did you formalize these ventures, and what's your thesis around investing now? And give me some examples of the types of things you look at entrepreneurs, or type of trends you're seeing.
Well, so right now I think soccer is our driver, right?
Okay.
We own with a group. I mean, I'm chairman, but we own with a group 2 soccer teams here in Louisville.
Okay.
And we've been 11 years on the men's side and 5 on the women.
Okay.
We built a 15,000 soul stadium, right? The men are first place as we speak, going to at least win the regular season crown, and the women are in 7th right now, at least playoff eligible, with only a few weeks to go, right? So by the time you air this, I will have either been correct or we would have found a way to blow.
You'll be celebrating or lamenting, for sure.
Exactly. One or the other. But we got there, and, we just saw more advertising situations, more people pitching to us. And we said, this looks like kind of an attractive space. Maybe we'll try to do this. I've got a great president in James O'Connor, right? And a good management team and, good coaches. I've never kicked a soccer ball in my life, right? So I'm not a soccer expert. They've taught me a lot in 11 years, but I would not consider myself to be expert. But it's been fun. And then it led us to looking at a team in Europe. And, we made a run at a couple, but they were more than I could pay or would pay, however you want to look at that.
Right.
And then in those travels, we made some friends in Scotland, and we bought into a gin in Scotland, and now we're building a distillery in northern Scotland. And
fantastic!
It's fun. Yeah, you have to go over there with me.
I would love to. I'd love to
shoot a few birds and a deer, and
absolutely.
Try the products.
Yeah. You give me a date and time. You give me a date and time, and I'm there for sure.
All right. Well, we'll do it. But so it was just like fun. And if you were gonna do it, bourbon was hot. I would argue now it's not. Right. Gin is pretty hot. Whatever ends up happening around CBD beverages, I don't see how you kill them now. They need more regulation, and we're all in favor of that. Right.
Okay.
But I see that as very much an emerging thing.
Right.
If you want to get a nice little buzz and only consume 15 calories in a beverage and have 2, we've got the perfect product for you. and no hangovers, so that's good.
So it seems like you've got a pretty diverse background in, sports and obviously spirits and CBD. Maybe you obviously mentioned the soccer team. Talk about some of the other success stories. Some of the companies you said you had a couple exits very recently and in the past. Talk about the ones
Right.
that have really done well and the ones you're really excited about.
Okay, so insurance obviously was one that I was in twice and did well.
Sure.
I recently just jumped back into an insurance venture for the third time.
Okay.
So I went on their board. It's a company called A4, and they're an
Okay.
emerging brokerage, PE backed, trying to grow.
Mm-hmm.
I like the people, and I know the
Mm-hmm.
space, right? I mean,
Right.
I could probably pass an insurance exam in my sleep, right? I did it for so long.
Right.
And it was good business.
Yeah.
And one of my best friends when I moved to Louisville, a guy named, a friend of mine was in the potable water business.
Mm-hmm.
So I joined his company and went to work with him. I've since exited. He's
Mm-hmm.
in the process, I believe,
Okay.
over time. That was a very successful venture. Our first trucking venture was good and we sold it and kind of liked it. I like the people, right?
Right.
Solving the problem, right? They got a freight problem. How do you help them
Yep.
solve it long term?
Right. Right.
I did try a woodworking cabinet business once that I'll go to my
Wow.
grave, never understanding how it didn't work. Uh, I only needed to sell 35 sets of cabinets a year, and I was buying 15 of them because I was building 15 houses a year. So you think it would have worked.
You were the best customer. Yeah. Yeah.
I was the best customer, but apparently the worst because it never, never took off. But I think in all those, the thing you find, right, is, if you do business with the right people,
Right.
and you're both willing to communicate, right? Scott, I can sit there and see what they're doing wrong, but if they're not going to listen, what difference does it make?
I'm so glad you said that because that was going to lead me to my next question. Because again, you've been so diversified. What are the attributes, in addition to what you just mentioned, of the entrepreneurs that you invest in? What's the primary skill set? Because you've been done it in a lot of different industries.
They have to have a passion for what they're doing, right? They have to love that industry. I think that's probably number one for me. I always ask them in the beginning, where do you want to go? And what do you consider a successful exit?
Right.
Because if we're trying to 10x or even 7x and we get there and then they say, well, I want to keep going, my next question then is, well, who's around them at that point, right? Is it their same friends that they started the business with? Not that that's bad, but do they really have people with the skill set to move them forward? And if they don't, then, we're probably going to exit, right? We're going to give them that opportunity to let the new partner buy us out. And I hope they own the world, but that's really not one of our goals, So we look first at, are they passionate about the business? Secondly, really, are they receptive to other ideas, or other opinions? And can we discuss them and be friends when we're finished, right? If it's going to get adversarial, I always say the same thing, right? I don't want to be in a boat with anybody who doesn't have an oar in their hand too.
Yep.
And I certainly don't want to be there if they're rowing in the opposite direction. Right.
Absolutely. We're gonna use that clip, going forward, John. Absolutely. That's a great analogy. Talk about at what stage are you investing in entrepreneurs? Are you there at concept? Do they have to be in revenue? Where do you get involved?
We probably get involved everywhere, right?
Okay.
Now those investments at concept for us are small. We're not a giant fund, and like I was saying, in the beginning. At least right now, we've never gone out and done a capital raise, right? We've done everything with our own money. Okay. And we know we need to change that, right? But really, it wasn't until the restaurant space that we actually said, okay, we're going to take some limited partners. And that was really intended in the first two examples anyway, to be more market specific. right? So if I'm going to go to Cincinnati, I need an ambassador in Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm going to go to Lexington, I need an ambassador or 10 in Lexington.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So in Lexington, we sold limited partnership shares. We are doing the same thing in Cincinnati now.
Okay.
And then, I'm old enough that my kids and their friends are doing well, and they're showing up looking for advice and saying, hey, I got X amount of money. I'd like to invest in something. And I'll show them 2 or 3 of our things and say, you're welcome to get in this as long as it's not the milk money, right? And you're not mad at me if this thing doesn't work, right? And, so far, knock on wood, that's, they've worked. Right. So we haven't had that problem.
Obviously, we started out a conversation, food and beverage. Is there a particular core that you're going to be investing more in, or is it just going to be opportunities as they come up?
Opportunities as they come up.
Okay.
Awesome. Yeah. I think, we're not really like, one of the things that always frustrated me, right, when I would put money in somebody's fund, our only base is IT and healthcare.
Right.
Right. And then I find one of their investments and I'm like, they use IT. I don't see any healthcare here. And so I like the idea of really letting people sort of pick and choose if they want to get in this space. I wouldn't say, you can get in the food and bev with us, but you can't get into trucking, for example.
Right. Gotcha.
So that's one of the things we've kind of been trying to figure out as we look if we put a fund together, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what I don't know, right? Mm-hmm. So, family office or bigger investors, probably we'd do better with a couple of those.
Yep.
And then some small LPs.
Okay.
At the same time, I'm not really, I'm too old to want to be part of somebody else's team.
Gotcha. Understood.
Frankly.
Understood.
We'll build and
I completely understand that. And at this point in my career, I'm very much the same way. I tell people I am currently a bad employee. So I definitely understand that. So the potential folks that do want to invest with you alongside you, why Neace Ventures? Why now?
Well, I think 3 reasons. It's fun, right? Mm-hmm. Which I said in the beginning. We want to be sure we have fun with you and with what we're doing.
Right.
So things that, I wouldn't, if my dear mother were still alive, the devout Pentecostal she was, I wouldn't advise her to invest in the spirits game with us. So people that enjoy that, right, like enjoy that, would have fun with that with us. I think the biggest thing though, right, is transparency. I'm not taking a salary out of this. I'm not looking for a salary. I'm a co-investor.
Right.
So if they do well, I do well. I feel like whoever the stockbroker is right there on that line, but I really do feel that way. We want you to see it and to grow it with us. And then third, I want to be sure if someone invests in a particular thing with me that I understand their time horizon. Don't get in a 7-year deal if you're really looking for 3-year money.
Yep.
Right. And so we try to push, I think, those 3 tenets first. Where do you want to be? You're going to have fun with it. It's like in Scotland in this new distillery, we'll start laying down product in 26. And you can buy a cask or a quarter cask or whatever, but you actually won't get that product until 2030.
Sure.
Right. So if you're a shorter term investor, we're not for you. And if you're not going to go over there and play golf or go over there and hunt, we're probably not the right investment for you over there, But if you like hospitality and you want to go over there and stay or take your family, or you want to go with your buds and play a little golf and see Northern Scotland, I think we're a good investment, right? And it'll pay off over time. And probably if you're my age, it's more one for the grandkids than for yourself.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
Because we'll own that real estate, and if we're successful in building a brand name,
right,
then, we'll be fine.
Fantastic. Any final thoughts you want to share with the listeners today?
Well, money's a commodity. It's like Doritos. They'll make more. I think the worst thing you can do is think it's yours and go to a party and not want to share the bowl with anyone else. right? Well, I've always felt that way. When we sold the insurance business, we made a lot of millionaires, and they made a lot more those that chose to stay with that company.
Right.
Right. Same way when we sold, the other two, the key people are still there. They're doing well. I like to think that we had at least some small hand in training them.
Right.
And that, we taught them the right values and the right moral compass as they did that so that they succeeded. But, I've got a master's degree in gerontology. I went out to USC and did the school, and my master's is actually public administration, but my focus was gerontology. If I had any sense at all, Scott, right, I'd have started a private for-pay service for seniors when I was in my 20s. Now, I insured a lot of them, but I could have started one and actually known what I was talking about, at least,
Right.
And I think that would be it, right? Be sure you really understand the checks and balances, the risks of what you're doing.
Sure.
And that you're prepared to risk, but not let it consume you if it doesn't work.
Right.
Exactly.
Exactly.
You can still go somewhere else and buy good kitchen cabinets, even though I couldn't do it.
So John, where can people learn more about Neace Ventures and reach out to you?
Probably the easiest is just reach out to me at john@neaceventures.com, right? And, tell me who you are or what you're interested in. And then we'll make sure someone responds to that, and, hey, we're here. If you like Kentucky, and how could you not, right? Or Southern Indiana, that's sort of where we work and laugh. You might explain one thing to me, though. If Indiana's 400 miles long and I live at mile 180, how is that Southern Indiana? I've never understood that, and I've lived here 42 years.
Well, I always say the same thing about South Dakota. It's way north in the U.S. So.
Beautiful spot, though.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, John, thank you for being on today. For all the listening today, make sure you like, follow, and comment on this podcast. And for the editing team listening in, we've got plenty of clips that we're going to be using for John and his podcast. And again, John, thanks for being on. And again, we look forward to keeping up on your progress.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Welcome back. Some really great takeaways I had with my conversation with John Neace and Neace Ventures. And, he's involved in a lot of different industries, and he really stresses diversification across these industries like sports, spirits, food and beverage, and insurance. And, this co-investor model really works because he doesn't take a salary. That makes his investments and his success directly aligned with that of his partners. And as I mentioned before the interview and during the interview, he really is a big believer in open communication with the investors, making sure they understand the time horizon of the investment and the risk associated. And, the great thing is he invests in things he enjoys. For example, he invested in a Scottish distillery, which has great perks, obviously, like the hospitality experiences involved in being involved in a Scottish distillery. And, he had some really great takeaways for the founders that he invested in. He wants, as I mentioned before, he wants passion in their industry. He wants founders that are coachable, open to discussing and considering different ideas and options, but also have a clear exit strategy, which I think is extremely valuable. When investors are dealing with entrepreneurs, they have to know that getting money in is the easy part, but getting the money out is the bigger challenge. And, and they also understand the risk involved. And, John has been using his great background in 2 successful exits in insurance, other successful opportunities and exits in his entrepreneurial life. And he's taken those skills and applying that to providing great returns and great advice to the entrepreneurs and his co-investors. So, we've got a lot more great interviews coming up on the Emerging Managers podcast. So I encourage you to like, comment, follow, and share this and all of our interviews, and see you next time on the Emerging Managers podcast.
Join Scott Kelly, Tracy Hazard, and their high-performing capital fund manager guest next week on the Emerging Managers podcast. Don't miss our upcoming virtual and live VC Fast Pitch and podcast events. For more details, background on our guests, or an application to be our next guest, visit emergingmanagerspodcast.com. Don't miss out on shaping the future of venture capital and entrepreneurship with us by joining our robust community of innovators and investors today.